Okay, now we're going to begin our conversation on the Pax Romana, which is basically talking about 200 years of Roman peace, kind of the height of the Roman Empire. Here's the handy symbol to remember it by. Um, so last in our story of the Roman Empire, we left off with Augustus creating um, essentially transitioning from a republic to the empire. Now, the republic is always there, but it's the man in charge, of course, is the emperor. And so, because Rome had gone through a series of civil conflicts and civil wars, especially in between our first and second triumvirates, Augustus had a lot of work to do, right? And he created many reforms. Uh, Civil service exam, a uniform set of law. Of course, this is handy. Common coinage, right? Things that make an empire run smoothly. And also something that's interesting, right? Establishing what is called the Praetorian Guard, essentially a police force of Rome. And here is a carving of a Praetorian Guard. So Augustus, there's this famous quote about him that kind of speaks to um, just how influential Augustus was in kind of setting up then, um, or setting up the future of this empire, right? And building a capital city worthy of its name. Okay, so again, unifying and enlarging the empire, using his imperial authority, and of course, always strong military. And so you can see a lot of our emperors will have the guise of a military office. So we're talking about then a 200-year peace, and so we'll start to see then the empire decline here, starting around 180 CE. And so the major problem, while Augustus set up a lot of reforms to help the empire run smoothly, he forgot to set up a clear line of succession or how power should be transferred. So after the death of Augustus in CE 14, the next four emperors will connect to Julius Caesar, right? So these are called the Julio Claudian emperors. And so you can see their names here in the red. Okay, so we'll just kind of go quickly through this. Do you have to know every little detail? No. But I think as you're kind of reviewing with your notes, you can add stuff that maybe you don't have. But I think keeping in mind one or two important facts will help you on the test. So our first emperor here is Tiberius. We've mentioned him before when we talked about the birth of Christianity will happen under the reign of Tiberius. So he's unpopular, but he's a fairly effective leader. And he will retire to the island of Capri, kind of an island, well, I guess near, close to Naples, actually, closer to Naples than Rome. And so he's known for not always making the best decisions, going after his political enemies, but perhaps maybe understanding what it's like maybe to be an emperor. And then Caligula then will take over, and he is kind of infamous, right, for these things, to the point where his own Praetorian Guard will assassinate him for his poor leadership abilities, to say the least. Okay, our next two Julian emperors are Claudius. So he is popular, right? And he's a good leader. And so I think that's also something to think about with the Pax Romana, and then, of course, other emperors, that you kind of have this. Sometimes you have good ones, right? Sometimes you have bad ones. So then Nero takes over, his stepson, and he's another of the infamous, right? He and Caligula, I think, are probably two of the most infamous of the Roman emperors. And so he was maybe more interested in the finer things of life, but maybe a little on the paranoid side, and he's also kind of infamous for his persecution of Christians. Um, all right. So, um, then of course, when we transition between another set of rulers here, another family group, we have a series of four generals will lead Rome, the year of the four emperors, so I think that speaks to some of the confusion here. Vespasian will eventually take over and then sort of create this monarchy, excuse the bad grammar, as his sons Titus and then Domitian will succeed him. So Vespasian was the first then to establish kind of a new dynasty here. And like many emperors and people in control, gained it because of the support of the armies. And fun fact, right? A first emperor who was not a patrician, right? Came from more humble settings. So again, have because of the chaos in between these family dynasties, right? He has to restore stability. So as we approach, the last years of the Pax Romana, we talk in terms of the five good emperors. Okay, and once the last one rules here, Marcus Aurelius, he'll die in 180 CE. That's kind of the beginning of the end, right? As we start to this slow process of decline. So again, keep an eye on the map here, and we can see kind of the height of the Roman Empire here, and certainly, right, the masters of the Mediterranean. Okay, so the first of our five good emperors is Nerva, and just a short time here, but he sets up this kind of precedent that he'll appoint an able military commander as a successor, and that will kind of help kind of lead to these next stable emperors. So Trajan is the last of the conquering emperor, so you can kind of start to see the shift, perhaps. And so he was born then here in Spain and then kind of rises through the ranks, but through his military prowess becomes the emperor. He will be the one to expand the empire to its greatest size, but we'll see maybe how long that will last. Okay, and so here's, I think, this shift, perhaps after Trajan and Hadrian. Oh, wait, let me go back. So Trajan, I want to point out, when we look at the art and architecture of Rome and kind of their legacy, there is a famous piece called Trajan's Columns, these columns in Rome that are really interesting, intricately carved stories, right, of his military campaign. So I just wanted to connect that. So Hadrian, then the shift. So if Trajan is the last of the conquering emperors, I think we start to see this shift when Hadrian then moves from the offensive to the defensive. And this is then the first time in the history of Rome that they have to start building walls because they are having trouble securing their border. So he builds a wall here. There the remnants are today, on the border of what is today almost, I guess, the border of Scotland and England. And so I think it's interesting, right? We're talking still today in the 21st century about walls and what function they serve. And I always am curious, what does it mean when a civilization builds a wall? I don't know. I'll let you ponder. Okay, and then the last of our emperors are Antonius Pius and then Marcus Aurelius. So Antonius Pius, then check it out, right? That's a long time to rule, and I think you know something about him that makes him my personal favorite, but promotes the arts and sciences, right? And then Marcus Aurelius is probably also one of the more famous emperors, but maybe famous for good reasons. But he's considered the philosopher king. I remember kind of harkening back to Plato's idea of a philosopher king. And so he was a great Stoic philosopher. And if you recall our that quiz we took at the beginning of the unit, how Roman are you? Remember, a lot of it was testing your mental toughness and the concepts of service and duty and what that means for a Roman. So this is a very famous book called Meditations, where he kind of meditates, right, on these ideas and are universal. And I bet leaders throughout the world, especially the Western world, I suspect, continue to read Meditations. And so he's also famous, I think, in more contemporary times for the movie Gladiator. So that movie kind of depicts the end of the good times, right? And this is Marcus Aurelius, and of course, the lovely Russell Crowe as a gladiator. And I think that movie kind of speaks to that shift. So, with your parents' permission, of course, feel to check it out. So again, what's the most important piece of information on this page? That's right, Antonius Pius giving salaries to teachers, maybe Fairfax County Public Schools or the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors could maybe check that out. So, in conclusion, this idea that the emperor was what he did, right? These actions of the emperor, whether they be good or evil or crazy, right, speak to what kind of emperor they were, and that's what they were known for. And I think what we forget sometimes in the stories of all these leaders, the great bureaucracy of Rome, the roads, the law code, the administration of the government, the organization of how they run this far-flung empire speaks to the solid foundation that despite some of the strengths or weaknesses of the leaders, that Rome ran smoothly for centuries. And so that, unfortunately, as much good as Augustus did, not setting up clear standards for succession of power will kind of haunt them to the end. And of course, really, who holds all the power? Perhaps it is the military, right? And even the emperor has to answer to them. Okay, and there you have it, the Pax Romana.